Rise to salute the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Well, thank everyone for coming on a snowy night. We're going to try and make this quick, but we still thank you for coming. Mr. Basil, I'll call the roll.
Mr. Basil here. Mrs. Bites?
Here.
Mr. Doty?
Here.
Mr. Kurtz?
Here.
Mr. Rathgeb?
Here.
Mr. Speed?
Here.
Mr. Radowski?
Here.
Mr. Wolf?
Here.
Mr. Martino?
Here. Under agenda edits, I have two items. I don't know if there's any others. Under new business, we'll be discussing a personnel issue. And under item 18B, we're deleting the property tax presentation. Mr. Kurtz, because of the weather, is not here in person, and he would prefer to do that presentation in person. So it'll be deferred until the next time he's here. Are there any other agenda edits?
Well, I guess it could be an agenda edit. But due to the weather, I had asked the students to stay home and not be here to do their presentation on their projects, and I am not going to be recognizing the students for the Berks County Mathematics Competition. We will be postponing that to the next meeting.
So 7A and 7B are deleted.
And the student government report will not be occurring this evening, as I had instructed those students to stay home, as well as our board representatives. I felt that it unnecessary to bring any of the students out this evening.
Okay.
Okay? Thank
Very
you.
good. Any other agenda edits?
Rich, that was on the new business 17. You're going to add C for this personnel issue. Is that what you're...
Yes. Well, no, it'll be B because we deleted Connors.
Okay, there you go.
And for everyone's knowledge, we had an executive session prior to this meeting, and the agenda says we're going to have one afterward, but we're not. We got everything taken care of before the meeting, so we'd be able to leave when we're finished. Procedures for public participation are on the inside cover. I think most everyone's been here before, but when it's time for public participation, if you would come to the podium, make sure the mic's on. You'll see a little red ring around where you speak. State your name and address. And Mr. Wolf has a machine here that will time 3 minutes. Okay, having said that, are there any presentations by the public on any agenda items? Seeing none, we'll move on right on to item. Don't we have a superintendent's report here anywhere?
Well, no, but I'd like to make a superintendent's report, if I may.
Do, so.
Unfortunately, I do not have anything to report with regards to our students, which I am sad to say because I am typically prepared, because it's all about the school board this evening, and I wanted to take the opportunity to thank the school board for your hard work and dedication to serving our community, our students, and on behalf of the administration, I will be making, not just by myself, but on behalf of the administration, we will be putting into the Blazer Foundation a donation in the board's name, and I will disclose the amount once that's solidified, but we are making that putting that into place for you all. And earlier we had provided a nice menu of some homemade Italian wedding soup and snacks upstairs. So thank you very much for all that you do. I appreciate working with you. And that's what I have this evening.
Well, thank you.
You're not going to mention the cheerleaders?
The what? The cheerleaders did make it to... Please correct me because I know I have this here. They're going to.
They just
They're-
got back from the States.
Correct, and they what, 7th, or what was their place?
They was 9th out of 39.
Third, okay.
They were sick.
They were 6th,
I'm sorry.
okay,
My bad.
thank you.
I was there.
Yeah, there you go. So our cheerleaders,
6'9", 6'9", what? That's 9,
6, 7, 39.
I was given that information by our athletic facilitator, and I apologize for not putting that at the top. But yes, our cheerleaders are doing quite a wonderful job.
Mr. Rathke, did you know anyone on the cheerleading team?
Yes.
Could you please wear a bow one day?
I was not there.
Could you wear one of the bows one night?
I can maybe get one of the. Can you airbrush it? This is kind of
I
like.
can Velcro it on.
Sticky tape, yeah.
Thank you. I apologize.
Moving on to the consent agenda, which encompasses items 8A through 8J. Is everyone content with what's on the consent agenda?
Yes, I would make a motion to approve 8A through J, and would like to thank the Eastern Berks Business Alliance and the Music Boosters for their donations.
Motion by Mr. Radowski.
Second.
Second by Mr. Wolf. Comments or questions? Mr. Basil?
This will be a unanimous vote for approval unless I hear votes to the contrary. Hearing none, motion approved.
And I agree with Mr. Radowski. We do thank the Eastern Berks Business Alliance and the Music Boosters.
Okay.
Presentations by board members. Mr. Basil, is there any secretary's correspondence?
Not that I see in front of me, no.
Okay. BCIU report?
Yes, Mr. Martino, I have a few things actually from past meeting with BCIU. First of all, the budget for the year has been approved by the IU board, which will be coming out to all the districts for their approval. There is a 2.1% increase, which is the first in 7 years. That amounts to a total of $754 for us, so of an increase, so not dollar-wise, in case you wanted to know what it was. I think preliminarily our, where are we at here? I think ours for the year is, I have it, I'll get it for you later. It's not, in the scope of things, what we pay the IU is not much at all. We did hire an assistant director to replace Dr. Hackman, of course, is now the director. He comes from Tulahawken. Actually, our superintendent knows him, so he's been hired. Fingerprinting was actually a discussion. I know there's probably been some talk here in the district about that and the costs associated with the requirements for getting everybody clearances every 3 years now. At the IU, we did decide that any employee making $20,000 and under will actually be paid for by the IU. The IU does have quite a few bus drivers and aides that do make that threshold, and we just thought it was a little prohibitive for them every 3 years to be paying for that, so we've taken that on. There's also been, I think, discussion about having a, perhaps if the county was looking forward to it, having a mobile fingerprint unit go around. Maybe would help all the districts with this process of having to take on this responsibility. And additionally, Dr. Hackman does have a meeting scheduled with one of the folks who, the legislature that actually was one of the sponsors of that bill. I don't know if the bill came out exactly what they were intending it to be. I think maybe it's a little more burdensome than they thought. So that maybe the idea is that they're going to try and tweak this law to make it a little bit easier for the districts to comply with. A copy paper bid has gone out and been approved. We were part of that. I do have the 45th annual convention for Berks County for the directors. I'll pass that around. I'm sure Lou will be getting invitation to that as well. It's going to be held in Hamburg this year. And finally, you'll also be getting a copy of this, but the IU's put out the 2015 directory for all of our folks that are in the state, our congressional and state senate and all that stuff. So I'll pass that around as well, but you'll be getting copies of that additionally. So
That's it?
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Rathgeb. Any comments or questions for Mr. Rathgeb? Seeing none, we'll move on to the Berks Career and Technology Board report.
Thank you, Mr. Martino. The BCTC did not meet yet this month. They will be meeting this coming Wednesday, and as I have a finance committee conflict, I think Mr. Doty's going to cover that meeting for me, so I'll have that report at the next meeting.
Is that all?
Yes, thanks, sir.
Any comments or questions for Mr. Dasky? Seeing none, thank you for the report. Legislative report, I'll keep it brief. The new education committees in the Pennsylvania legislature, and I'm not going to read all the members, but in the House, the majority is Stan Saylor. He's the chair. He's a Republican from York, and the minority is Jim Roebuck, a Democrat from Philadelphia. The Senate Education Committee, the majority leader is Lloyd Schmucker. He's a Republican from Lancaster, and the minority is Andrew Dinniman. He's a Democrat from Delaware County. The one thing I did want to mention, the Basic Education Funding Commission will hold its next hearing on Thursday, January 29th at 10 o'clock in the Greenville Area School District. And I wanted to ask Mrs. Bites, who is our PSBA representative, is the Basic Education Funding Commission scheduled to come to this school district? And if not, could you invite them to come?
I'll reach out to them and find out if such an arrangement could be made. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Bites. And the other thing, Mrs. Bites and I were in discussion earlier, she's much more familiar than I am with all things related to Common Core, so if you would, give us a little update.
For the public's interest, Representative Dinniman has proposed legislation to end the Keystone requirement as a graduation requirement, as you know, which is causing us a lot of grief here. So if anyone is in support of that, I recommend that they get in touch with Mr. Representative Dinniman and express the support for that initiative. Secondly, with the new installation of the crew up there in Harrisburg now, there's new members on the Education Committee, and they're also looking for stories about Common Core. So they're encouraging parents, grandparents, teachers, board members, anyone who's aware of the deleterious effects on children in any way, you may want to contact the Education Committee and let them know the difficulties, even administration, Mrs. Torshard, about the financial maybe implications that they're having on this. You can give a chance to affect that legislation. Thank you.
The part of the discussion Mrs. Bites and I had, and I'll keep this very brief, but I believe it's called remediation. Is
Yep.
That's going to be the costly component of Common Core, because as somebody doesn't meet the standards of the test as required, we then have to, it's basically tutoring. It's basically additional tutoring paid for by the school district.
And it's unprecedented that the state would set now the requirements for graduation. Usually that's been local control. To require that a student pass the Keystone is really unprecedented and unheard of. And what we're finding in practice now is that very good math students, for example, who are passing the classroom requirements with A's in honors levels algebra are actually failing the Keystone. And the kids are getting frustrated about that. Not in our district, but I've read about that in other districts. And they go back into remediation, and then they have to sign up again and take the Keystone the next wave, which there's 3 waves a year. And they have to keep taking it until they pass the Keystone requirement. And if they don't pass it by 11th grade, they have to complete a project-based assessment, and then it has to be approved by the superintendent so that they can meet the graduation requirement. It's really putting a burden on the whole school district.
Can I just ask, is there a disconnect between what is being taught in the classroom to get the A in the classroom and the test? And should we be changing that?
I don't believe that there's a disconnect because it's Algebra 1, and it depends on when you're taking Algebra 1, and it depends if you're really an algebra student. I think that's where the bigger problem is. We're not seeing a problem so much here in the Daniel Boone Area School District with regards to the algebra. The one subject matter that does stand out is biology. We do have, and we're not alone, that really is the test across the state that seems to be challenging, and it's more about when the student takes biology and then how close in proximity do they take the Keystone test. Essentially, it should be taken at the end of that semester, but the semester is not necessarily completed, so that's part of what we're facing as well. I would like to add that we have had in place for a very long time at the elementary level. We call it remediation or support, or there's a bunch of names that they use at the elementary level, to where we are constantly helping students to be able to be prepared for the PSSA, regardless of what they're using to test now. That is something that we've had in place for a while. And part of one of the grants that we do receive, the wellness grant, with the component of movement in that study time after school, we have been able to have an after-school program that's been fully supplemented by the Pottstown Wellness Grant and the grant that we have gotten from there. So they then are moving, it's tied into exercise and fitness, so they are getting remediation, then we make sure that they're getting some kind of physical fitness as well. So we have had that in place for a while. But throughout the day, they are getting support as well.
So there's a Keystone for biology?
There is a
Because
Keystone.
I thought the Common Core was not in sciences.
They're separate. I mean, it's Keystone, right? Keystone's not Common Core. Keystone is Keystone. Common Core, and no, the science test that is given in 4th and 8th grade has not been tied to the Common Core.
I know, and then the problem we're having with books this year was because we reversed the classes to coincide with the Keystone.
Correct.
The one and then, right?
Yes.
But if I understand it correctly, if we stop the Keystone exams and post the rug out from under Common Core, is that correct?
Right. Pretty much we can go back to teaching what we want to teach when we want to teach it, and we have our own graduation requirement. Do you disagree with that, Mrs.?
I don't know that it would be essentially tied directly to the PA Core standards. I believe what the Keystone is trying to say is that they're trying to tie the passing of their test to graduation, which is the more significant change. But I'm not sure what the correlation is.
The Keystone is pretty much tied to the core.
I thought we were implementing Common Core here long before the Keystones went into effect.
Yeah, and
so I'm not sure.
Typically, it's the way that my understanding of it and interpretation of it is that the PA Core is really affecting our K-8 curriculum more so than our high school curriculum. We haven't had to really realign anything at the high school level to match those standards, just making sure that we're meeting the standards when they're expected to be met. And that's why we essentially had changed our Algebra 1 class. 8th grade is taking Algebra 1. Those students end up taking the PSSA test and the first Keystone test. But I don't believe that there's I could be wrong, and I don't want to misspeak, and I will look into it much further. Yes. So.
At this point, I think it is, most people do feel that the Keystone exam requirement should be done away with as far as the burden that it's putting on the school district.
Well, what they essentially did was they took away PSSA testing at the high school level, and they replaced it with Keystone tests, and they're identifying the courses that they feel should be tested. So they went with a literature, a math, and
but
science.
What the Keystone does is it legislates that not that all kids take it, but that all kids have to pass it.
They have to demonstrate.
And sort of unheard of that
Right.
legislation is now not offering, making sure education is offered to all kids, but that all kids actually learn the same things, which is really unheard of, that the same requirements would be put on kids with IEPs and different learning issues.
Correct.
Everybody has to pass the key.
I think the important part of that is we keep talking about local control, and it really isn't very much.
And with special ed, there are special conditions that,
You can waive now.
not waive, but it's more of an applied, they're going to have to show that they're working through it. There's more or less like a project. So,
Thank you.
Are there any other reports?
Finance Committee meets on Wednesday night at 6:30.
Is there anything under building and grounds?
We did cancel the facilities meeting this evening, but we are going to meet next Monday, the 2nd, at 6 o'clock. Sandy, if you could advertise that for us. I just talked to the committee prior to the meeting. We do have a pretty good sized agenda, so it's probably better to have it on that night anyway. And I don't mind if you post it, Mr. Small gave it to me. If you can send a copy to Sandy, she can post it online if anybody wants to see it.
The
And I'll
agenda.
send it out to the committee.
The agenda?
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dowsey. Item 11, financial approvals.
Motion for 11A and B.
Second.
We actually have to vote on them separately.
Pardon?
Oh, you did?
Apparently.
Yes, item B has to have an individual roll call vote.
Okay, now I amend my motion for 11A.
Second?
Seconded, I'll read it.
Oh, sorry.
Amended motion by Mr. Wolf, seconded originally by Mr. Rathgeb. Any comments, questions, or discussion on the motion to approve the course and credit request?
Mr. Martino, I've got a couple of questions on this. And I think it might be directed toward Mr. Forcia, but there's quite a few instances on this, if I'm looking at the right piece of paper here. Tuition requests for, well, to me they're questionable. Colorado State University, Pueblo. I looked it up. It does exist. But I guess my question, to the administration and management staff is, I would just rather have a closer eye toward these type of requests. We have one teacher that's got 3 requests in for Colorado State University at Pueblo. We have a couple of other ones here. Fresno Pacific University. That one to me is pretty ambiguous. Not that it doesn't exist, but the course is the ultimate writing tool. I mean, I don't want to use the word bogus, but I'm not that bright. But to me, this just seems kind of.
Mr. Speed, unfortunately, there have been so many of these requests prior to my approval that I don't know what else to say. Established a practice that is very difficult for me to completely cut off.
Well, I will say that these are for the Act 48, which they're required to take, and I'm glad to see that they are lower cost universities. So at least I'm glad that.
But I'm not disputing your concerns, and I do address them, and I do make sure that in some way they are tied to their certificate, and this is something that we're looking at resolving.
Personally, I'd like to see them tied to a theme, like if we're working on our math grade, shouldn't we see more of like a focus on everybody getting extra math training, or if our reading is, I never see a theme underlying all.
Well, it's part of the collective bargaining agreement that they're entitled to reimbursement up to $3,600 per year. So this is, for their course and credits to.
It doesn't have to be tied to like inefficiencies,
It's
areas of weakness as a district that we need to be improving on.
No.
Let me ask, what does it have to be tied to?
According to the way that the course and credit, how it's been written out, is that it needs to be tied to an area that they're teaching. It has to fall within their certification area. It has to improve them as a teacher to, in some degree.
So it has to be within the area they're teaching.
Right.
And this course, you mentioned, Mr. Speed, was the ultimate running tool?
The ultimate writing.
Writing.
Right. So it's for a language arts teacher or, reading teacher. I mean, it's, yeah.
But you are looking at.
I look at every single one of them.
Well, there's another one on here, in the face of poverty.
In what?
In the face of poverty. What the heck is that?
How does your students, where they're coming from, how does that?
Some of them may be tied into the degree that they could be working on without me having the specific information right in front of me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I agree with Mr. Rathke, but the cost factor is down there, but I question, along with Ms. Bites' concern, are these courses that we are spending taxpayers' money on going to the betterment of teachers and ultimately the students?
Right. That particular staff member is a guidance counselor, so there may be a correlation, the way that I looked at it and what she may be having to deal with or working with. So.
Well, it's good to know that both the administration and the board are looking at these. So.
I agree.
Any other comments or questions? Mr. Basil?
Mrs. Bites,
Yes.
Mr. Doty,
Yeah.
Mr. Kurtz,
Yes.
Mr. Rathke,
Yes.
Mr. Speed,
Yes.
Mr. Radowski,
Yes.
Mr. Wolf,
Yes.
Mr. Basil, yes, Mr. Martino.
Yes.
Motion passes 9-0.
Item 11B, motion to approve the submission of Plan Con Part K related to the 2014 issue of general obligation bonds as presented by attachment 2.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Wolf, second by Ms. Twardowski. Comments? Discussion?
Do you have a general summary of that for the public?
PDE formality, any type of refinance of bond issue. It summarizes all the details. Mrs. Kramer has the stack of supporting documentation that'll go to Harrisburg tomorrow with it. It's every document related to the bond issue. This is the 2014 issue from December. There will be a similar resolution. I'm sorry.
Mrs. Bites, to have the public see the documents, it's...
No, I was just asking for a summary now for the public
Yeah.
so they know what we're delivering.
There'll be a similar resolution next month because we did the 2015 issue the first week of January. But it's just a
So this is
formality.
related to that $687,000.
Each issue was approximately $10 million, both 2014 and 2015.
For the public's knowledge, this bond refinancing will save us like $1.3 million. So it seems like a good thing. Any other comments or questions? Mr. Basil?
Mr. Doty,
Yes.
Mr. Kurtz,
Yes.
Mr. Rathke,
Yes.
Mr. Speed,
Yes.
Mr. Radowski,
Yes.
Mr. Wolf,
Yes.
Mr. Basil, yes, Mrs. Bites,
Yes.
Mr. Martino.
Yes.
Motion passes 9-0.
Item 12, personnel approvals.
Motion for 12A through C.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Wolf, second by Mr. Twardowski. Any comments or questions?
Yes, Mr. Martino. Seems to have a nice long list of leaves this coming agenda year. I know we've had this conversation before. Can we get these delineated so that we know, like for the childbearing leaves, etc., or for the so can we say that we know what the dates are for the FMLA, which for that period they are covered by our benefits, and once the FMLA runs out, then they should be, I believe, paying benefits themselves. And I know that our policy So we have quite a few of the unpaid leaves of absences. I think our policy says that they're allowed five unpaid leaves?
Yes.
Unpaid days a year, every 5 years?
Yes.
But I mean, some of these are
Months.
No, I think you're confusing an unpaid leave of absence with a request to take a leave of absence because you don't have any more sick time just in the middle or any more personal time to get, go on a honeymoon or somebody's taking a trip. If that's what you're referencing, there are some there. Those are just single days.
Yeah, the single day,
Right.
Does make sense, but we have, like, under the classified staff, I think there's, that says leave of absence, February through August.
That is the note that we got from the doctor saying that this individual would be under doctor's care
So that's
for that
under
duration.
FMLA?
That's under their leave of absence, that during that time they're under that doctor's care, so they are capable of using sick time, so they're not taking an FMLA at that time.
They're all on sick leave.
So, I mean, but can we maybe in the future get this spelled out so because I'm almost looking at it and I'm like, so that if I know that they are out on sick leave.
When you see a leave of absence, that means that they're on a leave of paid absence. We can't, I guess because of HIPAA violations, we really can't put in, obviously the reasons that they're out. So
I'm looking for the reason, I'm just saying.
no, but when the leave, when we're saying on a,
That's what she.
Because, so up here it says paid leave of absence.
Yeah, I was just going to say, if you look at, there's the confusion.
Okay.
Some of them say unpaid, some of them say paid,
And
some
some say
of them say nothing.
Yeah.
So I think they should all say paid or unpaid.
With the classified, they're using some paid and some unpaid.
right.
And so,
But I think even that, Mrs. Kramer,
It's a
should be
mixture
spelled
of the
out
two.
then. If they're being paid for 1 month and unpaid for a month, we could have those dates in there, which are which.
okay.
Basically, I want to make sure that, this list is so long, and I want to make sure that we are, because, the reason that FMLA was passed was to protect someone's job. If you need to have a leave to, if you're sick or you're caring for a loved one or child leave or whatever, and that, you're guaranteed to get a job back, that only lasts some weeks. I just want to make sure that, we're...
Yeah, but unfortunately, our policy like supersedes that, like for child.
For child care,
Right.
that's separate.
It's a year and you can request
It's
another
a year and then a year
and-
additional year, yeah.
And none of these are FMLA at this point. They are under a doctor's care opposed to being at home because they're, taking care of someone or whatever the other reason might be that they'd be taking an FMLA. And I think that's what confuses us, as we only have old agendas to go back on to look and see, how it was spelled out before. So we, just go back into the agendas that were
At
here.
some point, if you're under doctor's care, at some point, if you're out of sick time, at some point, we're replacing that employee if they're still out sick. You'll only be out sick for how long?
Well, I guess if you're having a surgery, you're capable of maintaining your position. I guess you're capable of maintaining your position and being on that leave until you're released from the doctor.
I think, I'm not sure, I think the individual can go out under FMLA if they're the one that's sick, but you're still only guaranteed so much time.
Right.
So we probably should be tracking that if it's unpaid, because once they run out of paid leave time, I would think it turns.
Which is-
that work for a year
it's
because they're sick.
I mean, I don't, and maybe we shouldn't even be discussing that.
Right,
I don't
yeah.
know.
It's all,
You can
it's
discuss
all,
that without the individual. FMLA has nothing to do with paid or unpaid.
Right.
Correct.
FMLA just simply guarantees that they could be out up to 12 weeks with supporting documentation and
Still have your benefits.
so they guarantee their job and their
And I don't know what our
benefits.
contract says.
And I have that
Be out
information.
unpaid forever.
I can tell you right now what they're out unpaid or paid. I mean, if you want to know. We have the supporting documents.
Is your concern is that at some point we should possibly be
Well,
looking at
we
the
should
placing
be
tracks
tracking this.
Well, it's definitely being tracked within the business office, and that's there under,
And the benefits.
right, the benefits and areas, so it is.
Obviously, with all these leaves, we have to replace them with substitutes or
Well-
get temporary people in or you have to juggle staff and, you know.
Are you asking, are they replaced?
I mean,
No,
well,
he's
even if
just-
you
he's
don't, I
generalizing.
mean, it's got to be a hardship somewhere. And something's happening.
Sometimes you see on the agenda a replacement, but sometimes you don't.
At this time, Casey is well aware that this is his staff, and he's managing it accordingly.
Okay.
Yeah.
He's
Well,
not
Mr. Raskin
replacing.
is saying there's an associated cost with all of these leaves, whether they're paid or not.
Yes.
And should we be seeing?
And we should be seeing what that cost is. I think we should.
And back to what you're saying, yes, there are normally replacements. In the case of the custodian, we're not, but my contention would be if we don't have to replace them, we don't need them to begin with.
Shouldn't that be spelled out in this document, though?
I don't know if,
Well, it depends how much you want to spell out
Yeah.
here. I mean,
I would have to defer to Brian to say that, with regard to leaves, I think that HIPAA would protect us going into,
You can't indicate, you can't disclose specific medical information,
Right.
but I mean, it can be designated as an FMLA leave.
Right.
The categories can be,
but when it's FMLA, that is listed. These aren't,
right.
okay.
because I was arguing that when we were doing the agenda.
Our
Our
Policy.
policy supersedes and gives them so much more time than FMLA does. It's ridiculous. But anyway,
So we really just need to see paid or unpaid. Is that what we're agreeing on
yes.
for now?
So is that the direction I'm taking?
Is that the
Please.
direction for? And knowing that it is being tracked by the business office, is that satisfying, Mr. Atkins? Agreed.
Well, I think too, and like I said, this might, I don't want to belabor this conversation, and maybe it's a conversation for another time, but I think at some point we should be looking at what they're allowed leave-wise, versus paid, unpaid, and are we carrying their benefits? Are there things that we are, costs that we're absorbing that maybe we don't have to?
Right. And I did ask our payroll office for that information, and I apologize. I do have that. I don't have it right here. I have that in my office.
These unpaid leaves, or we're not paying benefits.
When you're looking at if you're looking at A through H, is that what you're referring to, or are you looking at classified A?
Those one-day
Right.
items.
Obviously, yeah.
I mean, obviously.
Right. The business office or the payroll office has told me that they have it laid out exactly as to how much time they are allowed to be off with or without pay, how much time is allotted that they are covered with benefits, and they put all of the things right into place as those dates come up. That was the instruction that was given to me by the...
And you track, as far as the professional staff,
Yes.
they're unpaid.
Correct.
Because I know years ago there was sentiment of, well, it doesn't really matter if they take more than they get because we pay less for the sub than we pay for them.
Right.
But there's a learning issue
Correct.
with kids, and I don't think we should take that attitude because
I
we have
agree.
subs.
Well,
In classrooms are not-
Mr. Dowski, you just mentioned we need to look at our leave policy, and here's the uncompensated leave policy. So, and I'm going to give this to Mr. Wolf for the policy committee to review as you see fit, but I would question why employees that work only 187 days a year and have off most of the summer and Christmas and Easter also need leave of absence up to 5 days for the following reasons. I mean, it seems to me they also have sick leave and they have personal days, and I think we're overly generous with the time we permit off. Any other discussion about personnel? Mr. Basil?
Mr. Kurtz,
Yes.
Mr. Rafkin,
Yes.
Mr. Speed,
Yes.
Mr. Dowski,
Yes.
Mr. Wolf,
Yes.
Mr. Basil, yes, Mrs. Bites,
Yes.
Mr. Doty,
Yes.
Mr. Martino.
Yes.
Motion passes 9-0.
Item 13, programs.
motion for 13A through C.
Second?
Motion by Mr. Wolf, second by Ms. Brodowski. Comments or questions? Seeing none, Mr. Basil?
Mr. Rathke,
Yes.
Mr. Speed,
Yes.
Ms. Brodowski,
Yes.
Mr. Wolf,
Yes.
Mr. Basil, yes. Mrs. Bites,
Yes.
Mr. Doty,
Yes.
Mr. Kurtz,
yes,
Mr. Martino.
Yes.
Motion passes 9-0.
I'd like to mention that I'd like to thank the people listed here, the organizations listed here for the donations, and I'd also like to congratulate the administrators that worked to get us the $12,000 in grants. I think that's terrific.
Awesome.
Item 14, policy.
I'll make a motion for,
Well, there's no
We don't need a
No,
motion. We don't need a motion, but I looked at Mr. Wolf and I forgot what I actually wanted to ask. The booster policy has been reported before, but there were some changes. Is that correct?
Yes,
That's
there
why
was
it's
some
listed
change,
again.
alteration, so we thought it should go back to the first reading.
Okay, so
and actually I still have a question on that.
good thing I mentioned it, huh?
It's just minor, and I maybe it's supposed to be that way, but under item 2, definition, number 3, internal audit, with nothing after that, is that supposed to potentially left without a definition, or is that missing something?
No, I think it was left that way specifically.
Okay, I mean,
Yes.
it kind of explains itself,
Yes.
but, okay, that was,
Because they're going to be filling out that survey.
yeah, I
We want
saw that, yeah.
to give the business office some that latitude in what they would see.
Thank you, Mr. Rathke.
Okay, no other comments or questions about the 3 booster policies that are receiving first reading?
Just a notation, the item C, nepotism, that is the first in the series of policies that we're going to be addressing conflicts of interest. So we're going to be moving forward with a policy for the administration, for the professional staff, for the classified staff, and those that are classified as employees, which would be coaches, those type of individuals. So this one was an easy one. It was one we got through first. Probably work on the coaches. That's probably another simple one because they don't have a lot of authority. And we'll be moving those as we go forward. Thanks to Sandy Kramer for reaching out to PSBA and get us some samples.
I appreciate you guys taking that up. That was a concern I had, so thank you.
Very good. Anything on transportation? Nothing? Moving on to old business.
I'd like to move item 16A.
Second?
Motion by Mr. Kurtz, second by Ms. Radowski. Comments or questions? I have a comment that should this motion be approved, Berks County, if I read it correctly, the Berks County Commissioners have their own law enforcement support thing now where they've come up with a blue ribbon, like pink ribbons for breast cancer. And I think if we print out this resolution, it should have the Daniel Boone seal in one corner and possibly a reproduction of their county ribbon in the other corner, just to dress it up. That's just a thought. Other comments or questions in support of law enforcement?
I'd received a comment from a constituent that thought it may be a good idea if the district had a blue out day where all the students and administrators were encouraged to wear blue when we presented this.
Perfect color for Daniel Boone, too.
It's easy.
Yeah, we can hard
Yeah, we could do that. Well, assuming this passes, but we would invite them to the next meeting.
I don't know if we would want to, if we could push it to March because we postponed many things for this evening, but
Well, but we would invite them to a meeting soon.
yes.
Law enforcement week is April? No.
I'll look into that.
Usually in this
But yes, we will make sure that we
Yes,
bring
they
them
will.
to the board sooner than later,
Okay.
if this is approved.
Mr. Basil? These could be just voice votes or unanimous votes, can't they?
Yes, I
Do
agree
it that
with
way,
that one.
people want.
Yeah.
This would be a unanimous vote for approval unless I hear votes to the contrary. Hearing none, motion passes.
Item 16B, a motion to approve the posting of draft minutes.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Wolf,
Second?
second by Mrs. Bites. Comments or questions?
So, did we decide on a date of, I remember our conversation, but what was the actual date then when they'll be posted? And was that a problem for you, Sandy, or you want to handle that?
Regarding, what did you decide? Because there was no decision.
I thought we were going to ask Mr.
Mr.
Shubers
Shubers.
when, and I don't know if he got to it, I mean, if it got there, but there was discussion under the, I think it's the Open Records Act, or the Sunshine Act, that draft minutes are supposed to be made available to the public at the next meeting.
That's the right to know.
Under the right to know.
Yeah,
Right to
can't.
So the question is the next meeting the committee of the whole, like,
The voting meeting,
No.
or does the committee of the whole count?
No, they want to consider having draft minutes posted before the board president and the board secretary approves them.
well, it
So
was a twofold.
they
question.
said the minutes are approved at the next meeting. The question was, when is the legal next meeting for minutes to be voted on? So if we have minutes from tonight's meeting, do we have to have them approved by the committee of the whole next month?
Or the next voting meeting.
Or is it the next voting meeting where our,
That's a sunshine, I mean, that's a
I would think it'd be under
sunshine law.
I don't think the right to
And I don't know
know.
that there's a specific timeline, it's,
The right to know says that they have to be, they are discoverable under right to know, but after the meeting, the next meeting.
after they're approved.
No, after the next meeting, whether they're approved or not.
But see, I don't know that the right to know law trumps the Sunshine, the Open Records Act.
Right.
Not only that,
Right.
I think
That was what
All I
right
was
to
saying was
know.
that if they're available to the public anyway, as of the next meeting, then why aren't we posting them out there and so that they don't have to go through the formality of getting them?
Because we don't know if they're actually have to be available.
And that's
They're
the
not
thing.
available.
I think that the right to know law would require that if there were draft minutes, they'd be
that's,
available.
Right.
But
But we
when do
don't
they
usually
post?
have draft minutes.
Right.
Wouldn't we have draft minutes immediately following the meeting?
No, you only have draft minutes when you draft them.
Right, that-
sometimes I don't.
Instant turn.
It depends on what's,
But legally, we're required to by the time there's a next meeting.
Well,
The question is the meeting of the school board or the school.
Right, and that's,
I know what you're saying.
I don't know if there is a legal requirement under open records to have them by.
Okay, I could send that to Mr. Schubert since he hasn't had a
Yeah,
chance to
he's
weigh in.
looking at it right now.
Well, I mean, I'll look at whatever you had.
Okay. Why don't
and
I-
follow up, but,
I have no, pressing urgency to have this addressed
All right,
tonight.
let's kick this can down the road then.
Then we could get, I mean, it's a fine with me.
It's gonna get kicked forever.
no time required in the sunshine law. The Open Records Act will take a little bit more time to look at because it's a little bit more extensive. But if you have
I have
specific
Yeah,
citation,
and I didn't, yes.
yeah.
Yes, I did.
Yeah,
And I know
send me
some
whatever you
school
have.
districts do post their draft minutes.
So,
I've got an agendas, by the way, but,
Motion to table,
yeah.
And C, B and C.
Second, do I have to second?
No, Mr. Wolf has to.
Mr. Wolf made the motion.
Right.
well, if I motion to table it, somebody else seconds
You
it,
have to-
then.
We do B and C in one shot?
No, if there's a motion to table, the
There's a motion to table,
takes
that's right.
precedence over
That's
the
correct.
motion to vote on it.
Mr. Schubert, C was,
So somebody second my motion, please?
Mrs. Bites.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you.
Mrs. Bites.
Motion by Mr. Radowski, second by Mr. Doty to table
Want to
item
draft agendas out
16B.
there before they're,
Then you have to
And that's
vote, right? We have to vote.
well, the
Yeah, I
minutes,
think
the
we have to
minutes
vote
were
on it,
tabled.
to table it.
Right.
We ready for a roll call vote?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Wolf,
Yes.
Mr. Basil, yes. Mrs. Bites?
Yes.
Mr. Doty?
Yes.
Mr. Kurtz?
Yes.
Mr. Rathgeb?
Yes.
Mr. Speed?
Yes.
Mr. Radowski?
Yes.
Mr. Martino?
Yes.
Motion passes to table 16B.
This be.
Right, that was 16B, and then they said 16C.
Well, I think, in this case, I think we do.
Well, nobody has to make the motion.
Motion to table item
Hold it, hold it.
16C.
We don't make
You don't
it.
have to make the motion
Yeah.
for 16C.
Oh, okay, sorry. Jumped
You
the
don't make the
gun.
motion, you don't have to vote on it.
Well, it's a different discussion, a draft agenda, because I don't think anything was, it wasn't brought up under RTK or Sunshine. We were just discussing whether or not we wanted to post agendas to help engage the public.
But we do post draft agendas. I thought the issue was when. I thought the concern was when.
Yes.
So then the
Yes.
motion would have to be when to post it, because we
Yes.
currently post draft agendas,
Yes, it was just a matter of getting them
right?
The agenda,
posted sooner than,
Then
Yes.
I guess there would have to be a motion
Then Friday
to post
afternoon.
the draft agenda by X.
yeah.
So whoever feels strongly about that motion should probably make
Yeah,
it.
that needs to be more specific.
I do not post a draft agenda with draft written across it, like Mrs. Bites wants.
Oh,
Right,
see,
right,
it is-
and that's what I'm proposing, that as soon as they meet on Wednesdays, and that agenda is starting to,
Well,
Formally.
isn't all agendas drafts basically until?
seriously,
Yeah, we added
really?
them.
We added them the day of. Why aren't they available as soon as we sort of have them formulated?
Because the secretary hasn't seen it yet to comment, correct?
Correct.
And the secretary helps set the agenda.
Right, and the
So,
secretary is seeing them by Thursday?
This particular secretary usually gets to them by Thursday.
And that's, the agendas have been being posted by Friday. I don't personally know how we can do it
Can't we
any
make it
sooner.
by the end of business on Thursday so that we can wake up Friday and look at them? Because my problem is if I can't get to them Friday morning, I can't get to them until Monday.
But there are weeks that for whatever reason, I don't get up to the district until Thursday to work on the agenda. And then Mr. Basil wouldn't get it till Thursday afternoon or Friday morning himself.
And that's just the way it's going to be. I mean, it would certainly be
And, I mean, if you want to
exceptions.
start making this a paid position, maybe I can guarantee
You know,
I'd be
honestly,
up
I
there
thought
every
we had this
Tuesday, but
discussion under Dr. Otto. I didn't think it was a new discussion. I thought we talked about it under Dr. Otto.
I don't think you got
It would be posted
agendas
by
till
Thursdays. I thought I was just revisiting it.
I actually used to
talking
post
under
on
Dr. Otto, he left 2 weeks after we got on the board.
and I used to post on Mondays.
yeah.
So Friday's a good day.
Well, I think too, I mean, for me, most of the voting agenda stuff, I shouldn't say most, but a lot of the voting agenda stuff was on the committee of the whole.
Right, that's why we have a committee of the whole.
So,
The requirement is 3 days. I'm disputing whether it's 3 business days or 3
Well,
days.
the
Because the
policy
requirement in the policy,
or
which is
state
right from,
requirement?
the state code, right, is 3 days. It just doesn't say 3 business days or 3.
wait, there's a state code that requires the posting.
I'll send it to Mr. Supers if you want to table the discussion. I saw it in a few different places. It said 3 days in
And
advance.
Mr.
The
Supers,
agenda has
if
to
you
be
would,
posted.
send her the bill.
Yeah.
So what are we doing with this?
Can we kick it down the road?
Well, we didn't, nobody made a motion to
Right,
vote
so-
to approve it, so we can just move on.
Are you satisfied with?
Yes.
You're going
I
to send
do that.
the information to Mr. Supers?
Yes, thank you.
So we're tabling
Yes.
Yes.
it? Make a motion to table it?
No, we're just not making a motion to discuss it.
Withdrawing it. We're just withdrawing it. We're just editing the agenda.
Good, motion for 18 or 16D?
Yes.
Second.
What is the rate we're discussing?
Well, and I didn't put a rate there because I did want to bring that to the board. We did look into going with a subservice. And regardless of us going with the subservice or not, the subservice relies entirely on the school district's daily rate. And the conversation that we've had with the 4 subservices that we have met with and spoken to, all express that our rate is currently low. So I was coming to the board with I was suggesting $95 a day to increase by $15, which would increase overall by $36,000 over a year. But with that being said, there are two sub-services that have guaranteed us to that they could save us money. Number one, we wouldn't have to pay the ASOP fee for substitutes. So that would be $9,000 off of the top, and they're saving you money through the PSERS and other things that they're taking over. I'm not looking at this point to bring to the board to vote on a subservice because we're still haggling with them because there's a little bit of room to be able to make a better subservice contract, which I will bring at a later date. What I am trying to do is just to pursue getting the rate to a more competitive level with the districts in our area. Not going as high as Boyertown or Exeter, but trying to be in the middle of the pack. So my recommendation tonight,
95.
at flat. I'm looking to stay flat, right. My recommendation would stay flat, that 1 or 22 days or 55 days, you're making $95 a day.
And this is increased
Unless it's a
from
long-term
$80?
sub. Yes, an increase from $80 a day.
Effective immediately?
Yeah, once the board approves it, I would say.
Is that in our budget, Mr. Small?
That was my question.
Not with all the legal questions you're asking, Mr. Super.
Yeah.
Well,
Just
she
threw
gets
that
it
out
off the
there.
meeting, it's in his meeting retainer, right?
That's right.
Oh, nice.
He'll wait to answer until after the meeting, though, so.
Comments or questions on raising the substitute rate to $95?
Yeah, I've got a comment and a question.
Which you're going to give us first?
Well, I don't know. You can only have
That's not a legal question. Oh, well, whatever.
Somebody on that I just turned mine off, maybe I was on, and you can.
Okay. So, Ms. Torsia, in your update from last week, you indicated that you want to go from $80 a day to $95 a day, right?
Correct.
Okay, and then you're talking about it would increase our cost by approximately $36,500 per year.
Correct.
But with your negotiations, you're thinking that's going to save us $20,000, so that we're netting out to the district another $16,500.
Correct, but
somewhere in that.
Right, and not immediate, not until I bring to the board to contract with a subservice.
Okay.
So for right now, I just wanted to get the increase of the rate approved.
Okay, so refresh my memory on the discussion that we had the other week about the coverage or lack of coverage that the district is experiencing because we're not paying subs a going rate.
We are having a difficult time filling all absences, and for whatever the reasons are, we are attributing it to that our pool of subs is diminishing. They're not coming here for $80 a day when they can be in the other districts for $95, $100, $105. So just trying to be a little bit more competitive.
And from where you sit, what this coverage issue, what's happening with the kids? There's no coverage. They're going to other classes. They're going to study hall, or what's happening?
All of the above.
All of the above. Okay.
In some situations, they could be going to study hall. In elementary situations, we could be pulling from specialists like our reading specialists, our math interventionists, people who are working with students of need that aren't getting, what they should be getting that day in order to cover a class. Any one of those scenarios.
So it's just not a good situation.
Correct. And I don't know if this is going to cure it. I'm hoping that it's going to help improve it. And then going with the subservice, who does have a larger pool that they can get people out, that should help as well. But they start with our rate.
Well, and then also coupled with the fact with the administration looking at why teachers are absent,
Yes.
and tracking that, maybe this will
Bring a little bit more of attention.
Absolutely. If we get a better handle on attendance.
Yeah, so we'll go down the road. skipping and holding hands. Okay, fine, thank you.
Thank you.
I have one quick question as well. Sorry, so will the subservice, will they give us any kind of guarantees for coverage?
Yeah, actually, as part of our goal fill rate is 95%. Currently, our fill rate is about 87%. That's an average that we have so far, but they do put into this contract some guarantee. I don't want to say, obviously, nothing's 100%, but they do. And they feel as though they can meet our needs.
So if they don't meet the guarantee, there's monetary or?
I did not have the personal conversation with them, but there is the ability to write penalties for not making fill rates into the contract. So, yes.
Thank you.
Mr. Hurley did I have to give all of the credit to Mr. Hurley. He, since our first meeting at the beginning of the month to the middle of last week, he has reached out to 4 sub-services. He made a wonderful spreadsheet, which I would be happy to share with you, showing what the cost would be and what they can do. He asked for a little bit of time. He says he feels as though he has wiggle room to be able to work with them before I would present a sub-service for us to go to. And there's no one really using a sub-service, so I didn't really have anyone to compare to within this county. So we could be on the cutting edge for something. There you go, Connor.
Is there wisdom in doing this now in the middle of, while we're exploring this other option, or?
Well, regardless if we go with a sub service or not, the rate is where we need to
Is this where we're going to start with them? Whatever we decide on tonight is where we're going to pick up with them?
Right. Our sub rate will be $95 a day, no matter whether we go with a sub service or not. They stay with what our rate is.
But then won't we be paying the sub service more to effective?
Actually, no.
95 to the sub?
I won't be able to do a good service of being able to explain this. So when we get to this,
I just don't want to make a decision now. Maybe we should just limp along until we get a final proposal.
Regardless, we either start paying now the increase of $15 a day for our sub service so that we can gather more subs until we
but
get
we're still
to.
Not sure that, we're still going to be on the lower end of the scale, even with 95.
Well, we're right in the middle.
Maybe
we would be right in the middle of the average.
I recall seeing a couple that were
right.
in the 70, 75, 70 still.
I don't know if there was anything that low, but the average for the county is $90. The lowest that
an average of 90. You got to have some in the 70s and 80s.
No, there was 85s. There were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 85s. Us at 80, and another one at 85.
So, Ms. Torres, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but essentially what you're saying is, in order to just get in the game.
Yes. We need to get our daily sub rate up.
We need to go to 95, whether we use the sub service or not.
Right.
We're paying them $10 an hour right now. I mean, and they have to have a degree and they have to teach our kids. We're paying them a third of what we're paying a regular teacher. A starting regular teacher, not even a.
You're exactly right. And if we can get a great deal on a sub-service and we're still netting out only $16.5, approximately.
Right.
Okay.
That's our goal. We're hoping to be able to save money as we move towards. I don't mean to cloud what I'm looking for at this point.
Yeah.
Without a sub service, I'm trying to get into the more competitive game of bringing subs to our district. And if they know they'll make a few more dollars a day, that may help.
Not to diminish subs. I mean, they're very helpful, and they really help us out in a tough time. But they really can't compare them to the classroom teacher who, write the lesson plans and manage their curriculum, their grading, and they help. And I don't mean to diminish what a sub does, but
there are some good ones out there that we would like to keep in our district.
And believe me, I know that. Frankly, I think in junior high and high school, you might as well have them in study hall because.
Right.
But that's not always the sub's fault. A lot of times there may not be a plan, or the kids have no respect. But if we have to have a licensed teacher, I mean,
Right.
I'd be happy to
Right.
pay somebody $10 an hour to babysit them, but if we have to hire a certain level of professional, I would,
Let me
you
just
know.
ask, with the 80s and 85s you rattled off, and the average being 90, why are we going to 95?
To get in the middle of the pack.
In the middle of the pack's 90. That's
Well,
the average.
to get a little bit above, because I know that my neighbors are at 105 and 110. Yeah,
She had to ask for more. 'Cause she
Right.
knew that-
I didn't go for 100, so I went with 95.
Mrs. Torres, so I understand the goal, the district goal is 95%,
Correct,
and we're running around 87%.
correct. That,
So in a couple, if we approve this in a couple months, 2 months, we should be able to see what that percentage is that hasn't moved in a positive direction.
yes, currently, Mr. Hurley has reported that our May fill rate is about 70%, December was about 70%, and Fridays is about 73%. So he has broken down what our fill rate has been around key times of the year.
Okay, so it should be pretty simple to give us an update.
Yes.
Maybe the end of next month.
I'm quite sure he'll be able to do
So
that.
interesting that at key times of the year we have
Yes.
a great need for subs.
I was going to comment on our trying to reduce the need for subs. And rather than haggling over how much we're paying them, why aren't we looking at, and we have talked about some of these, there's only so much. Yeah, I mean, there's only so much we could do, but these.
Well, part of it, and Mr. Speed mentioned about better control and attendance would also help, so.
Rome wasn't built in a day.
Right, but in the
I'm with
meantime,
you.
we need teachers or substitutes, but,
Trying.
Mr. Basil?
Thought you'd never ask.
Yeah, thank God.
Motion to approve the daily rate at $95. Mr. Basil, yes. Mrs. Bites?
Yes.
Mr. Doty?
Yes.
Mr. Kurtz?
Yes.
Mr. Rathke?
Yes.
Mr. Speed?
Yes.
Mr. Trudowski?
yes.
Mr. Wolf?
Yes.
Mr. Martino?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you.
I don't remember.
And we all voted yes.
Motion to approve.
Wait,
Mr. Doty and
Second.
who motioned that?
I think it was
Rathgab and who?
I seconded.
Thank you.
No, but on 16E now, the motion was by Mr. Rathke, second by Mr. Trudowski, to approve the minutes of November 10th. Comments or questions?
Who made the motion?
That was the last
Rathke and
motion.
Trudowski again.
For 16E?
Yes.
Did E already?
Yeah. Comments, you just asked for comments. Would you have any
Yes.
comments?
Yes, I want to compliment the administration for what a wonderful job they're doing with the minutes recently.
I have to give all of the credit to Sandy Kramer, quite honestly.
I think they've
So,
been very
Basil, quick,
informative.
roll call vote.
Thank you.
You don't need a roll call vote for this, do you?
Please. Thank you, Mr.
Apparently,
President.
it's a
You're
motion
gonna
to
vote no, because
approve.
you always vote no.
Thank you,
right?
Mrs.
The
White.
minutes.
I'm getting tired of moving.
Please.
Okay, are we ready for a roll call vote?
Sure.
Okay, Mrs. Bites?
Yes.
Mr. Doty?
Yes.
Mr. Kurtz?
Yes.
Mr. Rathke?
Yes.
Mr. Speed?
Yes.
Mrs. Twardowski?
Yes.
Mr. Wolf?
Yes.
Mr. Basil, yes. Mr. Martino?
No.
Motion passes 8-1.
Oh, actually.
Item 17A, motion to approve minutes from November 24th through December 15th.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Rathke, second by Mr. Wolf. Comments or questions? Mr. Basil?
Mr. Doty?
Oh, yes. Sorry, yes.
Mr. Kurtz?
Yes.
Mr. Rathke?
Yes.
Mr. Speed?
Yes.
Ms. Twardowski?
Yes.
Mr. Wolf?
Yes.
Mr. Basil, yes. Mrs. Bites?
Yes.
Mr. Martino?
Yes. You gonna tell us the motion passed?
Yes.
Unanimous?
Yeah, motion passes.
Item 17B, Mr. Subers.
Yeah, I would propose the following motion under 17B. Motion to approve separation and release agreement as presented by the solicitor.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Wolf, second by Mr. Radowski. I believe all the discussion was upstairs in executive session. So, Mr. Basil?
Hold on one second. Wait, Ms. Manley.
I would actually just like to say something, and I know this was a personnel decision, so I'm not going to go into details, but I'm going to be voting no on this motion. I think there was an alternate way to handle this without going into details, so I'm going to just be voting no for the record.
I don't believe we called for a vote yet. Mr. Basil?
Mr. Kurtz.
No.
Mr. Rathgeb.
Yes.
Mr. Speed.
No.
Mr. Radowski.
Yes.
Mr. Wolf.
Yes.
Mr. Basil, no. Mrs. Bites.
Yes.
Mr. Doty.
Yes.
Mr. Martino.
No.
Motion passes 5-4.
Okay.
I did find, on a separate matter, I found the reference in the Open Records Law to draft minutes, and what it does is there's a definition of records which would include minutes of a legislative body such as the Board of School Directors, and then it sets forth certain exceptions to records, and an exception, which means it's not a public record subject to disclosure. And listed in the exceptions is draft minutes of any meeting of an agency until the next regularly scheduled meeting of the agency. So all that's saying is if you do have draft minutes, after your next regularly scheduled meeting, they become a public record, even if they're draft, subject to disclosure under the Open Records Law. It doesn't set forth any specific timeline or any requirement for the posting or circulation of draft minutes, and there's no timeline for the approval of minutes from for a meeting. And the Sunshine Law doesn't provide any timeline with respect to the approval of minutes. It just defines what has to be included in those minutes. So if you have anything more, I'll look at it and I'll
That's
look
what
at
I
the
had.
matters.
The question, Mr. Sievers, was what's your interpretation of what the next meeting is? Is it from the Committee of the Whole to the Committee of the Whole? Or the Committee of the Whole to the school board meeting, which means 2 weeks? That the draft minutes
would
would
be
be
the next regularly scheduled meeting, and your Committee of the Whole is a regularly scheduled meeting. However, it's not saying that, it's not telling you when you have to have your minutes.
Right, but then my next question would be the legal question, what constitutes draft minutes? Because the exemption is draft minutes until the next meeting. What is draft minutes? Is it as Sandy writes one paragraph, but she hasn't finished? What is draft minutes?
I'm not debating
I'm not sure.
I'm not debating the legality. I was just saying as long as they were legally to be made available to the public at a certain point in time, then why not just do it anyway?
Because I don't know when they're draft minutes. Are they draft minutes while she's typing them, when she's done typing them, when they go to the president, when they go to the secretary? At what point, when they come to us?
I understand the question. I don't have the answer. As I said,
I think if you're getting the minutes out every 2 weeks, I think if we're getting the minutes out every 2 weeks, it shouldn't be an issue.
I agree.
I mean, if we're getting them out 7, 8 weeks later, then it's a problem. But after a meeting, if we're getting the minutes out and they're prepared for the next available meeting, I mean that's every 2 weeks.
Well, I mean, we approved the minutes for November 10th tonight.
I know,
and it's January 25th.
It's way too long.
That's what I'm just trying to avoid. The frustration that people
let's look
feel
at the
with
process. The process is the meeting tonight will end around 9 o'clock. So Mrs. Kramer is not going to work on the minutes tonight.
Why not?
I don't know, but she's not. So she'll work on them over the course of the next couple of days because to do them she listens to the recording and goes back and forth sometimes to make sure she has it accurate. At that point, then, let's say it's the end of the week, and then she'll send them to Mr. Basil and myself. So assuming we get them back to her, but is that the right time frame? Do you usually get them done by the end of the first week? Mrs. Kramer?
Whatever you guys want.
No, what do you usually do?
It depends on what's on my desk.
And how long the meeting was, I would guess.
Well, obviously, there's other things that take priority.
Right.
So, I mean, my feeling is,
The normal.
I think to vote on November's minutes at the end of January is ridiculous.
Yeah, but that's not normal. Well, the
Well, no,
November 10th, right, the
November 24th,
Yeah.
2 months. But on the other hand,
Not because they weren't prepared, though.
but on the other hand, I don't
Thank
know
you,
that we
Mrs.
can
Dorfman.
guarantee we're going to have them in 2 weeks either.
Right.
Right. The minutes were prepared from November.
Is the issue, I mean, this can be direct here. I mean, I know there's a disagreement between how Mr. Martino wants the minutes and how Mr. Basil wants the minutes. Is that still the issue?
No, that's not the issue.
No,
The
that's not the
issue
issue.
was going to Mr. Basil and then getting back to Mrs.
So what happened
Kramer.
with the November 10th minutes was they came to me, and then actually I had shared them with Mrs. Bites because she had some questions about them, and it never, from the two of us, it never got back to the board for approval. That's what went
So
through.
just an anomaly for that one.
But quite frankly, the board typically gets the minutes at the committee of the whole from the prior month,
Yeah.
and we vote on them. And if there's a problem with the minutes, that's where things get held up, because people disagree with what's in the minutes.
Normally, this month's minutes will be approved in February.
Right. But usually
That's
at
how
the
it's-
voting meeting.
Yes,
Right,
that's
not
how it's
committee.
always been. And for some
typically
reason, lately, it's...
Voting meeting to voting meeting is what
Right.
it's typically going.
If it's not defined.
Well, then there's nothing to preclude that. This isn't requiring you to advance that schedule. This is just saying if there are, and I don't know at what stage they become draft minutes for these purposes. It's not a defined term in the act. But it just says if there are draft minutes, they do become public after the next regularly scheduled meeting.
In the interest of driving in the snow, that item was tabled, so everybody has their thoughts. We will vote on it at a future meeting. Let me just say a couple things under new business for the information of the public. Interviews for Mr. Hankel's replacement. There will be second interviews Thursday evening, the 28th, with 3 people coming back for a second interview. Negotiations with the DBEA and the support staff have begun. Right now it's mostly procedural, but negotiations with the teachers began January 21st. This is public information because it was discussed at a finance committee meeting. Sodexo may owe us some money. That letter was sent out to them today requesting the money. And for Mrs. Torsh's information, I just received a text that Owen J. Roberts and Pottstown have already called a 2-hour
I know,
delay
I
for
saw
tomorrow.
that. And Pottstown, yes.
Any presentation by the public on any issues? Seeing none, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Like to know if there's a delay, I can tell them.
They're